You're probably familiar with our next guest as a body positive and wellness activist and a badass yoga instructor, but today she's here to talk all about the modern Black experience and why cannabis justice should be on the top of our minds right now. This is Advocate Now. I could talk about fitness and wellness for days, but I do want to switch gears because you are multifaceted, and I want to talk about the topic of cannabis because it can be a life-saving medicine for some. There have been years of bad propaganda that has made it seem taboo to many people, but now you're championing for no one to be in jail for weed through something called We Go High NC, which you co-founded. Tell me a little bit about it and why it's so important.
So we started We Go High because we realized that cannabis users, even in places where cannabis is legal, we are relegated to the shadows. We feel shame for our practice, and we feel like we can't talk to each other about it. We can't talk about it in the mainstream. People are afraid of what it means to be called a stoner. All of these ideas that individually contribute to us having a system where there are people who are making millions, billions of dollars on cannabis while other people are in prison for the exact same practice. And that silence that is encouraged by the stigma is what became just too much for the founders of We Go High to stand by. And so we started in North Carolina because we're from North Carolina. I'm from North Carolina, and North Carolina is a state where cannabis is still illegal. And so it's very easy to see the impact of what that does to legislature and how it has impacted the way that politicians show up. But it's something really that I think comes down to the individual voters and everyone understanding that it's not about whether or not you use cannabis. It's about whether or not you are in favor of a system that disenfranchises some while bringing power to others.
Yeah, We Go High NC, it's a cannabis justice organization.
Exactly.
What does cannabis justice mean?
Cannabis is frequently the linchpin in a lot of social justice issues. It's the thing that, because it is such a powerful tool in incarceration techniques, it's something that, and because there's not a lot of conversation around it, it allows for so much, especially racial injustice, to continue. It is predominantly Black and brown people. And it's something that especially continues in areas where, like, there are whole towns that are built around the economic structure of prisons that are primarily incarcerating people who are there for cannabis. So if we can find those connection points, and We Go High is really primarily interested in just giving people their voice, recognizing that your power as an individual cannabis user is limitless, especially if we stand together.
For those who don't know, what is the difference between decriminalization of weed and legalization of weed?
I think it comes down to who it's impacting. So legalization is really about bringing cannabis, to the plant itself, to different markets. It's really it's an economic issue in a lot of ways. Decriminalization is a justice issue. It's about making sure that people who use cannabis do not have to fear for their safety, their livelihoods. There's so many people who would lose their job if it was ever clear to anyone that they use cannabis. Like, they could lose their housing. This is something that decriminalization actually directly impacts, because it makes space for people to feel free in their lives, regardless of how you get the plant or whether you even use the plant at all. It's about freedom as opposed to legalization, which is really a monetary issue.
What would you say could be possible alternatives for nonviolent, inappropriate cannabis use instead of incarceration?
I don't believe that incarceration should be at all a response should even be a part of the cannabis conversation. I think that cannabis is a plant that is in the same category as coffee or tobacco or any other plant that is, while it is a commodity, it's not something that needs to be used as a part of the justice system. And I think that there's a larger conversation that could be had about incarceration in general and whether incarceration is a benefit to our society. And I think there's a sizable argument that it is not a benefit in any case, and that even in the case of what we would call serious violent offenses, that there are other methods that we can use as a society to rehabilitate people and to make space for mental health to really be prioritized over just putting people in cages. I think that that has, in general, proven to be a pretty ineffective way of dealing with anything that we deem as crime.
I also think that it's rare to see a female in this type of space advocating for this, tackling this topic. Why do you think that is?
I think that in general, if you are marginalized, it's scary to speak your mind. And I think that especially for women, that it is we face so many obstacles, and there are so many people telling us that we don't deserve to speak. And then we repeat that rhetoric to ourselves and to each other. And I think that's why it's so important for women to stand up for each other, to not stand against each other, and to really say that, to stand in our power and understand that we're carrying the legacy of so many people who had to stand up for themselves, and that it's possible for anyone to do that.
So how can we all support cannabis justice and continue to destigmatize cannabis moving forward?
The most powerful thing that each of us can do on any issue, not just cannabis justice, but it's really to inspect and be present to the biases that live within each of us, and the things that we're ashamed to say that we believe, and the things that make us embarrassed. Like, really look at those things. Look at the way that you're a part of propping up a system that disenfranchises other people. And then from that place, grow from there.
What else would you say that you're passionate about advocating for? I mean, as if you don't already have enough on your plate.
I think, to me, freedom and self-acceptance are the keys to our society. I think that if we can all accept ourselves exactly as we are today, then we can see the very important role that we each play in our world. And I think that we spend so much time trying to pretend to be somebody else, or trying to fit into a box that someone else created. I think that I spent the first couple decades of my life literally trying to be who I thought my parents wanted me to be. And so even just stepping away from that idea that anyone else could ever know you, that to me feels like the most important thing that anybody could do.
It's so true that we do spend the majority of our lives trying to shed those old stories that we've been imprinted with, whether it's come from our parents or ancestral lineage, other family members, classmates growing up in school. It's a lot of work, but that's how you find your true self.
It is a lot of work, and it is scary. And I think frequently it is lonely, but it also always leads you to the people that you need to be near. So it's not lonely for long. And it imbues you with a sense of power and strength that can stand the test of time.
Since this is Advocate Now, what are some other topics you think we should be paying attention to, advocating for?
It's really important for us to notice the link between the way that economic injustice happens and the way that we are moving in a society toward the haves and the have-nots in a way that is very dangerous, and that I think really actively disenfranchises so many people. I live in the Bay Area in Northern California, and it is really a study in the houseless population and the people who are really trying to find their footing in a world that I think actively wants them to not exist. And I think that it's really important for each of us to see the role that we play in propping up that system and in playing toward economic inequity that is so vast that it makes it hard for us to grow together.
Jessamyn, these are all such important topics, and you are doing such incredible work. Thank you so much for taking time to chat with us today.
Feeling is mutual. Thank you so much for having me, Sonia.
I'm Sonia Baghdadi. Thanks for watching and advocating. For more stories and content like this, visit advocatechannel.com.